So in this month of loving kindness, metta as a practice takes centre stage really, and that's why I'm talking about it tonight. Is everybody familiar with a metta practice? Most people? Some? Yep. Yep. Has anybody heard of the Metta Sutra? Perhaps a few? Yeah. So tonight I'm going to explore the Metta Sutra sort of line by line and give you a flavour of what the Buddha was trying to communicate about metta. So let's start by doing a short meditation. And what I'll do is I'll read out the sutta and take a few minutes. So just get comfortable now. You might want to close your eyes, tune into a sense of stillness, perhaps bringing awareness to our heart center. So this is the Metta Sutta. When you know in your heart what your true purpose is and aspire to realizing peace, then become a competent person, committed, happily committed, receptive, flexible, and kindly spoken, without comparing yourself to others. Become competent, contented, and happy, enjoying a simple life with few duties, even-minded in response to sense impressions, and duly respectful without identifying yourself with any group. Avoid doing anything unworthy that wiser people would notice. Then meditate like this. May all beings be happy and feel secure. May they be happy in their heart of hearts. Include every being without exception, the frail and the robust, from the smallest to the largest, whether you see them or not, those living nearby or far away, living now or yet to be born. May all beings become happy in their heart of hearts. May no one deceive or look down on anyone, anywhere, for any reason, whether through anger or consciously causing harm. May no one want another to suffer. As intensely as a mother cherishes and protects her only child, perhaps risking her life, develop a boundless heart for all beings. Develop a boundless heart of friendliness for the entire universe, radiating metta above, below, and all around, beyond self-interest, beyond rivalry, beyond hatred. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing throughout your life, emanate this mindfulness, which they say is like living in heaven, right here and now. In this way, you will come to let go of views, see things as they really are, and be spontaneously ethical, abandoning craving for sense pleasures from the rounds of rebirth, you'll finally be completely free. So that was the Metta Sutta. It's from the earliest recorded collections of suttas, the Sutta Apada, considered to be the closest that we get to the words of the Buddha. This is a sutta concerning about the practice of metta. Metta is a Pali word. It loosely translates as loving kindness, but there's much, much more to it than just the description of loving kindness. So this sutta, the Buddha is talking about how to practice loving kindness. So we start with the words, when you know in your heart what your true purpose is and aspire to realizing peace, then become a competent person who is committed, happily committed, receptive, flexible, and kindly spoken. To know something in your heart is to have a deep emotional response or resonance. It's just not a thought, more powerful than just a thought. We're looking for an emotional response to our own true purpose, and this gives us our life meaning. You may have already felt a heart response to something in your life, but was it your true purpose? Was it pointing to a purpose beyond just what you think might make you happy for a little while? The sutta points us towards realizing peace rather than happiness. So peace here refers to a freedom from suffering, freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion, 3 root poisons, to a heart and mind that is undisturbed, not entangled with craving or aversion, not reacting with everything we come in contact with. To work towards this, Buddhists follow the path of meditation, ethics, and wisdom. So it's not surprising that this sutra addresses these 3 aspects of practice. This particular verse finishes with, without comparing yourself to others. Conceit separates us from others. We feel arrogance when we think we are better than someone, or we can just add to our low esteem if we think we're below someone. These 2 opposites are really going to get in the way of opening our hearts to others. If this is our first response, to compare or judge when we come into contact with other people, how much of this do we really do? How much of our thoughts are involved in comparing ourselves with others? On my first solitary retreat, I was just amazed and quite shocked at how much my mind was involved in this. And I'd been doing this for most of my life. For the first time, I was able to see how this behaviour had coloured and poisoned my relationship with others. For me, it became a crucial insight and a real working ground in my practice. How much do you have a sense that you compare and judge yourself with others? You might want to ask yourself that question. Sutta goes on, it says, be contented and happy, enjoying a simple life with few duties, even-minded in response to sense impressions, and duly respectful without identifying yourself with any group. So following on from the last line, we need to be contented with who we are right now. A simple life supports contentment, whereas craving for external things or approval undermines our contentment. This should not lead to complacency, which is the near enemy of contentment. Complacency is a superficial satisfaction with how things really are, particularly in the attachment to our present state. to our present likes and dislikes. It is the near enemy because it looks like contentment, but is actually complacency. Even-mindedness, as referred to in the Sutra, refers to non-reactivity in the mind, not allowing ourselves to be pulled by our likes or dislikes, which are based in the arising of craving and aversion. But to simply appreciate things without grasping. So that's what the Sutra is trying to tell us. So this simply appreciating without grasping. What underpins this practice is being able to respond independently to our likes and dislikes. To be fully independent of them and not being shaken around by them. To the point where we are contented, our contentment is not dependent on getting more of what we like and avoiding what we don't like. The more we feel that this strategy of chasing and avoiding just isn't worth it, just isn't working, is fruitless, the more we are able to let go of it. So this reflection on our craving and aversion is very, very important. The Sutra goes on. Avoid doing anything unworthy that wiser people would notice. So practicing the precepts at all times. I often invoke the Buddha as the wiser person when faced with some sort of ethical dilemma or contemplating something a little bit dodgy or wanting to react to something that's happened. What would the Buddha think of this? If the Buddha was standing next to you, how would you act? If you're mindful enough to catch yourself and ask this question at the time, it could be quite a clarifying way to circumvent those reactions and connect with the full ethical purpose of what we're doing. I often also invoke the exemplary behaviour of those around me in the Sangha, my spiritual friends, who by their actions and being inspire me and help me avoid doing anything unworthy. This is ethical practice. The Sutra again. Then meditate like this. May all beings be happy and feel secure. May they be happy in their heart of hearts. So we are directed to meditate or contemplate or reflect on a heartfelt wish for the happiness of all beings. May they be free of fear and safe. I mean, really open up to this attitude of loving kindness. I feel this attitude needs to come from awareness that others want to be happy just as passionately as we do. So we need to quieten the mind in meditation or reflection in order to open up to this truth, this insight. The happiness alluded here comes from within, from one's own heart. We wish them to be happy in their own heart, in themselves, not necessarily what we want from them or what we think can make them happy. This practice of metta is underpinned by simple needs that do not put us in competition with others, underpinned by an ethical attitude and free from conceit and self-absorption. This enables us to be more available, to have a heart open, a space within the heart to consider others beyond the distractions of personal craving and self-interest. Include every living being without exception, the Sutra then goes on to say, the frail and the robust, from the smallest to the largest, whether you see them or not. Those living nearby or far away, living now or yet to be born, may all beings become happy in their heart of hearts. So metta goes beyond those we hold near and dear, beyond the people we like or admire. It's a practice for all living beings, whether we like them or not, whether we know them or not, whether they're part of our culture or not, regardless of their age, and including future generations. So there's an implied responsibility to consider the well-being of those who come after us and what world we will leave behind for them. So the breadth of this attitude of loving kindness is immense, even infinite, and seems rather daunting. But really, all we need to do is be aware and kind to the person in front of us, or to the people or person that come into our thoughts. Of course, being aware and kind to all beings is not without challenges, and there are many obstacles to get in the way. The Sutra then goes on. May no one deceive or look down on anyone, anywhere, for any reason, whether through anger or consciously causing harm. May no one want another to suffer. Here the Sutta cuts through any excuses or justifications for us not acting with metta. They did this, so I will do that, is no longer a justification for our actions. We cannot put the blame on others for being happy or being angry or frustrated. The Buddha is encouraging us to take more responsibility for our mental states. We certainly encounter this in the fourth stage of the meditation practice, the Metta Bhavana, with our difficult or frustrating person. It's the person that we find frustrating and difficult. Taking responsibility for how we feel and not fueling blame and resentment goes a long way to repairing broken relationships. I had a friend who robbed my house a few years ago. I'll tell you a little story about that. He was desperate for money, and on a previous visit had taken my spare keys and knew that on a particular weekend I would be away on a retreat. However, he was not a professional thief, and it was quite easy to figure out who it was. When confronted with this evidence, he was devastated and apologised the best he could. Even though I felt upset and betrayed, I had plenty of reason to be angry and feel hurt. But firstly, I realised that these feelings were not going to get me anywhere, and certainly was not what my friend was needing. He was not going to benefit from this. He was in a terrible state of remorse and guilt. The last thing he needed was a broken friendship, to be put down, whatever response, unmetaful response like that. So we slowly moved towards each other and acknowledged each other's sufferings. I was putting myself in his shoes. And we also were able to talk about his gambling addiction, which he manages well day by day. So that's a real positive. I feel that's a real positive that comes out of it. It's allowed him space to do that without feeling guilty and remorseful. We're still friends, and he comes over to visit. The first time he visited my house after the break-in, I must admit I felt a reaction arising, a nervousness. But I was able to connect with an overriding purpose that I needed to be kind and empathetic towards him. And that was the only way that things could work out. All this was hard work, but the alternative indeed would have been very sad. We probably would never have, seen each other again. It would be a breakup in our friendship. So it's a very sobering reminder of what our choices can lead to. Very dependent. Is metta in our choices? The Sutta goes on. As intensely as a mother cherishes and protects her only child, perhaps risking her life, develop a boundless heart for all beings. Now the Sutta moves from the breadth of metta to its potential intensity, that of a mother for a child in this description of the Sutta. So metta can have an intensity that values life of others as much as we value our own life. Values the well-being and needs of others as much or even more than our own well-being and needs. Depending on the situation, we can put others before ourselves. So I'm reminded that there are always more depths to this practice to develop this boundless heart with no limit In the metta practice, we are able to focus on the deep sense of concern, openness, and emptiness when we're meditating, so we're able to take it further when we encounter people off the cushion in our lives. Sutra continues. Develop a boundless heart of friendliness for the entire universe, radiating metta above, below, and all around, beyond self-interest, beyond rivalry, and beyond hatred. We're instructed here that there is no limit to metta. We can always go further. I don't find this discouraging. In Buddhism, it's not about getting to an end point where I can just have a rest and put my feet up and say, job's done. The fact that the practice for me is how can I go beyond my current limitations, where I am now, starting where I am now, and then trying to go beyond those limitations. Asking myself, can I do a little better? Can I be a little bit more kinder in this situation? And not resting in complacency. That's just good enough for now. So so the sutta goes on, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, throughout your life, emanate this mindfulness, which they say is like living in heaven, right here and now. The Sutra now stresses the importance of constantly being in touch with this attitude of loving kindness, being mindful. This is where mindfulness comes in. We're being mindful to be kind, bringing this attitude of metta to every interaction as best we can. So we ask ourselves, how often are we in positive mental states? How spontaneous is our metta practice and our response in any situation? Then there is a promise about living in heaven. This reminds me of the first verses of the Dhammapada, a collection of the sayings of the Buddha, early sayings of the Buddha, a beautiful collection of sayings, and I recommend them. And the first verse tells us that from a wholesome mind, happiness flows like a shadow that never departs. True happiness from the inside flows from this practice of metta. It's very important to really connect and emotionally with this idea that a wholesome mind, happiness flows like a shadow that never departs. The Sutra goes on into the last verse. In this way, you'll come to let go of views, see things as they really are, and be spontaneously ethical, avoiding craving for sense pleasures. From the rounds of rebirth, you'll finally be completely free. There's a lot of teaching wrapped up in this last verse. When it talks about letting go of views, it's signaling letting go of the egotistical views of a separate and more important self, thinking that you're more important than others. What views might you have that keep you separate from others? You may recognize some of these. I don't need anybody. It's really awkward. I don't want to bother other people. I'll never change. I'm not interesting enough. I'll never be able to forgive them. I'm better than them. So these are the sort of views, many others, that separate us from other people. The practice of metta, whether in meditation or in daily life, leads to another regarding attitude or empathy that breaks down these unhelpful views. When we see even briefly beyond the view of ego, we can see through the delusion of a separate self and awaken to the interconnectedness of all life. The well-being of others is just as important as our well-being. So we will not want to harm them, and we'll try to be as kind as we can be given the situation. This is the truth of how things really are. This is the wisdom of the Dhamma. Metta is a condition or attitude that we can bring to every situation. If we engage in this attitude of loving kindness for any length of time, we'll naturally become more inclined to act ethically. This idea of being spontaneously ethical. The Buddha, being fully awakened to this reality, had no views that separated him from others and was completely open to this truth. Being completely open to the truth of interconnectedness, the only response is to be kind to all beings. So we have come to the end of the Sutra. I'm coming to the end of the talk that reveals the truth of interconnectedness that springs from the Metta Sutta and this practice of Metta Bhavana. I'll leave you with this quote from the Buddha and his key insight into the importance of metta. Again, from this collection of sayings of the Buddha, the Dhammapada. Not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified by love. This is the essential law. Thank you. Thank you.